the show where you can ask me anything that you like about politics, and I will do my best to give you a great answer. I know that politics can be really intimidating when you're first trying to learn about it. I know it can feel like trying to learn a new language, so this is the show where you can ask all your questions about politics and nobody's going to judge you or roast you or make fun of you or anything like that. This is not a show for fighting. This is not a show for roasting. This is not a show for debating. It is just good faith answers to all of your good faith questions. Everybody is welcome here, whether you are a Republican, a Democrat, something in the middle, something on the outskirts. I do not judge. I do not fight. I am not here to debate you. I know there's a lot of really popular live stream shows out there where Democrats and Republicans yell at each other and call each other names and try to own one another. That is not this show. It doesn't matter what your political opinions are, your political beliefs or religious beliefs are. If you have a good faith question that you want to ask on this show, you will get a good faith answer from me. What is up, Willie? Good to see you again. So yeah, any questions at all? What's up, Mikhail? Good to see you again as well. So yeah, any questions? Just go ahead and throw them in the chat. Everybody is welcome here, whether you're a Republican, a Democrat, something in the middle, something on the outskirts. You will not get made fun of or yelled at. Willie says, thoughts on Democrat voters in Virginia turning on Abigail Spanberger? I'm actually not up on that specific issue, Willie. So sorry about that. What is up, A? Yo, back to you as well. So, any questions at all? Throw them in the chat. What do you think of the Second Amendment and all the gun deaths in America? I mean, if you talk to somebody who is on the right, they will tell you that the right of a militia shall not be infringed means there can't be any gun control regulations. If you talk to somebody on the left, they will tell you that well-regulated being in the Second Amendment means that we are allowed to regulate gun ownership and have some sort of gun control. I am in that camp. I believe, and many responsible gun owners believe, that we need more gun control in America. If I could wave a magic wand and just get rid of the Second Amendment, I probably would. I don't think that that's like the main opinion of every Democratic voter, and it's definitely not the opinion of any Democratic politicians that I know about. But yeah, let's get some common sense regulation on there, and hopefully we can make some of these gun deaths go down. The thing that I'm most staunchly against, though, is the attitude and the platform of the elected Republican politicians that they think that the gun violence is fine. They think that there's no issues with it. They think that's just the price we pay for being the greatest, freest country in the world. And I just think that it's a shit take. And everybody out there who has suffered because of gun violence, whether they have been, hit or disabled or they've lost somebody, then I know exactly who to blame for that. It is Republican politicians who refuse to let anything get done. Okay, let's see here. Willie says, Dem voters in Virginia are disgruntled because she's turning out as a corporate Dem, not progressive, I'm guessing like she was running or something. Yeah, I got no problem with, primarying Democrats that are not living up to their potential or not doing what you think they should be doing. But yeah, I'm not too familiar with Spanberger's record, so unfortunately I can't speak more to that. NZS says, what do you think about anarchism in general? I'm against it. Joshua Kimmich says, thoughts on capitalism? It needs to be regulated. Right now we have unregulated crony capitalism, socialism for the rich, capitalism for the rest of us. We have capitalism trying to solve problems that it is constitutionally unable to solve, like bringing down healthcare costs or housing costs or getting us renewable energy, making education not prohibitively expensive, shit like that. So yeah, let's do some regulating on this capitalism shit. Dan says, Trump or Kamala? What a weird question in 2026. Some dude says, do you think any of the Dem positions can be softened on to capture some moderate Republicans? I am less interested with capturing moderate Republican votes as I am just sort of like the average American. And if you dig into the polling for average Americans, they will tell you that they believe the Democratic Party is too far to the left. But what they mean by that is that they want the Democrats to be further to the left on specific issues like healthcare and the economy, but they want them to be further to the center on things like the border and crime. And I don't think that that is a bad compromise, specifically because I think that the image that people have of the Democratic Party being too far to the left on immigration and crime is largely inaccurate and unfair. So yeah, I think continuing that, democratic socialist push towards economic populism and getting rid of income inequality and getting universal health care is the move. But you can also speak openly about, making our cities safe and deporting illegal immigrants who have been doing crimes and are bad people. Willie says, what are leftist and centrist views on crime? That is a really good question, Willie. And I think it depends on who you ask that question to. As a leftist myself and not a centrist, I would tell you that the leftist position on crime is if you solve poverty, you solve crime. And that we have a justice system that is too punitive. It is racist. We have Black people and white people committing crimes at basically the same rate, but Black people are overcharged and over-policed, so it makes it seem like they are doing more crimes than white people are. Reforming the police department, expanding the police department so that it's not just, we're not sending cops out to deal with people who are having psychotic episodes. Like, we need people that are trained in that thing very specifically. I think the centrist view is probably a little bit more of just like more of the same of what we've already been doing, which is just like giving more money to the police, building more prisons, throwing more people in jail, harsher sentences, shit like that. I think that appeals to people's kind of like lizard brain. Like, if you don't really think about it, it seems like that would solve the problem. But yeah, I think that is much more of an issue of messaging and propagandizing the Democratic Party as being soft on crime or soft on immigration than any actual difference in, substantive policy. Ready. Mikhail says, I'm going to a Linkin Park concert tomorrow. Can you wish me to have a good time there? Yeah, have fun seeing Linkin Park. John Abbott says, thoughts on Trump not having time to go to his son's wedding, but having time to go to NBA games. I mean, we've known for a long time that Trump doesn't really give a shit about any of his kids except for Ivanka, because he doesn't give a shit about anybody that he's not trying to have sex with or steal money from. NVSTY says, do you think Israel runs America? No, but Israel has a lot of influence over America for a bunch of different reasons, not the least of which being we have a corrupt campaign finance regulations in America, meaning that if you have a lot of money, you are able to sway elections and get and pressure politicians into voting towards your interests. And while I wouldn't say that Israel itself is like giving those politicians money or threatening them, AIPAC, which is an organization that is funded largely by American billionaires, is using that money in order to push those politicians in that direction. But that goes for not just Israel, but also for other right-wing organizations like the Heritage Foundation and the Federalist Society. Like, anybody who has a lot of money can have an outsized influence in American politics, unfortunately. Mikhail Meme says, should Barron Trump be sent to the military? I think that it would be a great policy if you vote for war, then your children then have to go fight in that war, or you have to go fight in that war. But until we have a draft, I don't think that it would be. It feels a little punitive to send him, as opposed to it being the policy that anybody who does it has to do that. Okay, Hawa says, what's your ideology on progressive Democrats? Sahad Talks Politics says, do you believe that Kurdistan should be autonomous? I don't know enough about Kurdistan to talk on that, unfortunately. Well, BB says, thoughts on Trump ruining the White House lawn with the UFC arena? Trump seems really, really focused on construction projects, which I think is weird. When the Fed just came out with a report that more families are skipping meals because they can't afford it now than even during the pandemic, that gas prices are through the roof, that inflation is skyrocketing, that we are on the brink of a recession. Housing's not getting cheaper, healthcare's not getting cheaper. This war doesn't seem to be winding down anytime soon, and yet he's like, oh, let me build a giant monument to myself that's an arch. Let me build a fucking golden ballroom that goes 6 floors underground for some fucking reason. Let me redesign the Kennedy Center. Like, why are those your priorities instead of actually trying to solve problems? We potentially have a bunch of very dangerous diseases on the precipice of becoming pandemics, and you're instead focused on building your stupid fucking arch in your ballroom and redesigning the Kennedy Center. Like, what the fuck? Like, why aren't more people pissed off about his prioritization or lack thereof? Joshua says, why did JD Vance blame Trump for the gas prices? I did not see him do that specifically. Can you tell me a little bit more about that? Okay. Daniel D says, you used to stream daily. Well, I had a baby, Daniel D, so I took a month off. Scott Clower says, will Erica Kirk show up there with fireworks blasting? Potentially. She's doing everything she can to stay in the limelight. Okay. Mikhail Meme says, does inflation lead to more crimes? Yes. Inflation leads to unaffordability. It bleeds into the unaffordability crisis. And so, and when people become more impoverished, then they do more crimes. Okay, Hudson Bomba says, who are good people to research about different policies that aren't biased? So every human being, thank you, Dridge, for the congratulations. Every human being has some kind of bias, but there's a difference between a natural human bias that you potentially struggle against because you're a professional journalist with ethics, and somebody whose bias is not challenged at all, like their entire platform is biased. And if you look at the data, this is not me as a leftist saying this, this is like science saying this. Right-wing news sources are the least credible, least accurate, most biased news sources. So just avoid that, and you're probably fine. Once you've done that, if you really want to try to avoid bias, just have a varied news diet. Just like check out a bunch of different sources, and hopefully you'll be able to eliminate any kind of unconscious bias that way. Okay, Adam says, I don't know what that means. My boss doesn't even pay me. He just tells me to keep up the good work. Well, I don't love your screen name, buddy. Okay. Joshua Kimmich says, is it true that no one in the Trump administration really wants the war with Iran and it's just Trump? I mean, I'm sure some people do. I think some people see the value of it. I would bet that Stephen Miller is a big proponent of this war because he believes that it is going to create an environment where Trump could potentially declare a national emergency and cancel elections going forward. Like, that is a big part of the Stephen Miller project, is like creating enough chaos that they can further their transition to a full fascist government. But yeah, I think that there are a lot of politicians who are looking at their futures, like J.D. Vance and Marco Rubio, for example, and they're the ones who are like, this war and being associated with the Trump administration who is behind this war is potentially killing my chances of running for president in the future. All right, let's see here. Michaela Meme says, is there any state in the U.S. that has taxation similar to European taxation? I don't know. My guess is that blue states probably get closer to that. Chili Willy, thank you so much for helping me reach my first gift goal of the day. User a whole bunch of numbers says, see, you're a Dem, but what's you thoughts on the current state of the border? So, the border, it's difficult to say what has or hasn't changed on the border, user a whole bunch of numbers, because the Trump administration has been lying about things a lot. And so what I can tell you is not specifically about the border. I can tell you more specifically about immigration policy. Now, the immigration policy of the Biden and Obama administration was to deport people that do violent crimes and, are not participating in their communities and shit like that. The Trump policy is to just detain and deport anybody who is brown. And I do not believe that is a good or moral policy. It's not really solving the problem. It's just creating a worse America. Rabab, thank you so much for helping me reach my second gift goal of the day. Additionally, both the Biden and the Obama administration were a little bit more focused on cleaning up the pathway to citizenship. they were trying to hire more asylum judges and immigration judges so that there wasn't this massive backlog, so that people that did get caught coming across the border illegally weren't then just like set loose in America for however many years it took for their case to come up. And I think that that was a better policy. Whereas the Trump administration has fired asylum judges, they've fired immigration judges, and they've basically made it impossible to come into this country the right way unless you are a white person. Like, they are opening up the country to white South African refugees, quote unquote. But anybody else, it's basically impossible for you to come here, quote unquote, the right way. He's creating more illegal immigration, basically. Okay, let's see here. Spyro says, do you think Vance will step down, and who do you think will take his place, and who will win in 28? No idea who will take his place. No idea who will win in 28. I am skeptical that JD Vance would step down. I think that he views proximity to power to be too valuable for him, even if the Trump administration is making it difficult for him to run for president in 28 specifically. If I had to guess, and political predictions are not worth the paper they're printed on, I would say that JD Vance is hoping that Donald Trump passes away before his term is over. That way JD Vance gets to be president and then run as an incumbent. Or just like dip out for 4 years and then try running again in 32, hopefully against the Democratic president. I think that he views that he will have a better chance of winning that election. And thank you to, I forget who it was. I think it was Rababab or somebody else helped me reach my third gift goal of the day. And now we are on to finger hearts at clock, the best parts of every day. Isla says, do you support Hezbollah? No, they're a terrorist organization. Joshua Kimmich says, is the Republican Party Christian or is it bullshit to get votes? It is 100% bullshit to get votes. Now, that does not mean that everybody who votes Republican is a bad Christian or a fake Christian or lying about their religion, but there is no substantive moral theology behind the Republican platform. Like, Jesus said to feed the hungry and heal the sick and clothe the poor and house the unhoused and treat thy neighbor like thyself, and do unto others as you would have them do unto you. You know, it is easier for a camel to pass through the eye of a needle than for a rich person to enter the kingdom of heaven. And the Republican Party platform is the opposite of all that shit. Thank you, Spyrus. I appreciate that. Okay, Irishman says, are you in a job sector for politics? Like, am I looking for a job in politics? Not particularly. I'm just kind of doing this. User a bunch of numbers says, of the deportations, what percentage of them were legal? You know, I don't have that number off the top of my head. Use a whole bunch of numbers, but I can tell you this. 90% of the people that ICE has been rounding up and deporting have done no serious crime. Like maybe jaywalking or maybe just the fact of overstaying their welcome. A new report just came out that 90% of their detentions have been illegal. Meaning there was no basis for it. So either the people were, you know, citizens or veterans or legal residents or whatever. But as far as the deportations are concerned, that I cannot tell you. But I do know that there are people who have been deported illegally. People who were, like people like Kilmer Abrego Garcia, who were sent to a torture prison in El Salvador, who had done exactly zero fucking things wrong. Here's a whole bunch of numbers. Okay, Irishman says, no, I mean, are you working in politics? No, I am not working in politics. The worst nerd says, thoughts on the current situation in Ireland? I have no idea what's going on in Ireland. Charlie says, who's been your favorite president in your lifetime? Definitely Obama. The Biden administration, I think, was better than the Obama administration, just as far in, you know, in accomplishments and also in progressiveness. But I don't believe that Biden was as good of a president than Obama. Okay, let's see here. Jabberer, what's up with Israel buying Albanian land? I have not heard anything about that. User a bunch of numbers says, of the 90%, what percentage of them were illegal? I don't know, but I know that the detentions were illegal. So whether it was done in an illegal way or the people were legal residents or citizens, 90% of those detentions did not follow the law. So if you want me to look up some more of these numbers, like just shoot me a DM and I can look it up when I'm not live streaming. Nala says, do you know anything about Philippine politics? I do not. Joanne McCormick says, not Clinton. I mean, Clinton was okay. He gave us the first budget surplus in, a generation. And then the Bush administration just fucking shat that down the toilet with all their tax cuts for the rich. Rabab, thank you so much for helping me reach my first finger hearts goal of the day. But I don't think that it's easy to defend Clinton's neoliberal bona fides, like he was a little too business and billionaire friendly. Additionally, all of his, issues surrounding sexual harassment and sexual assaults are difficult to ignore. So yeah, I would say that that definitely Obama. Grateful David says Rubio 2028 landslide. God, I don't understand how any human being can like Marco Rubio. He's a jellyfish have more spine than Marco Rubio. A piece of wood has more beliefs than Marco Rubio. Ketchup says Ken Paxton seems like a good person. Well, then you are getting the very wrong impression of Ken Paxton. He is one of the worst human beings, one of the corrupt human being. His own staff called the FBI on him because of how much illegal shit he was doing. He was impeached by his own party in Texas. Like, you have to be a real fucking piece of shit to get impeached by your own party in Texas. Oceanaholic says, wasn't Hezbollah created to protect Lebanon? If not for them, who will protect Lebanon from Israel? I do not believe that the ends justify the means. And so if you're Hezbollah, and first of all, I don't even know if that's accurate. The history of Hezbollah is accurate or not. But if you do war crimes, if you punish innocent civilians in order to achieve your political goals, then you are a terrorist organization. Now, that includes the government of Israel, though. The government of Israel is guilty of doing war crimes also. Okay, Gladiator says, what are your thoughts on insider trading in politics and the trend of presidents' net worth going up? So I think it's a little myopic to say the trend of presidents' net worths growing up as though every president is engaged in the same kind of self-dealing and corruption that Donald Trump is. Like, it makes sense for a president's net worth to go up in so much as they can, write a best-selling book or get a lot of very lucrative speaking deals once they leave office. But no president in American history has grifted and conned more money for themselves, both from, foreign nationals and just out of just stealing our fucking tax dollars than Donald Trump. Like, we're talking about billions of dollars taken from American citizens and put in his pockets, and taken from foreign nationals and put in his pockets. Like, it's fucking psychotic. Like, 3,700 trades is what Trump has done in his, in his first 2 years of his second term. Like, that's fucking psychotic. There's no comparison. It's fucking apples and oranges, man. All right, Mikhail Meme says, does racism exist against everybody? I mean, I guess prejudice exists against everybody, but some people will tell you that racism, it only exists if it's shooting down, basically, like if it's going from the powerful to the not powerful. So in that case, it would be difficult to be racist against, for example, straight white Christian men, but you could be prejudiced against them. Wabibi says, do you think the future of the Republican Party would be libertarian views? I have no idea what the future of the Republican Party looks like. It has become so extreme, MAGA coded. There's going to be a massive fight for the throne once Trump is gone, and I don't know. It's a fucking shit show, man. It's like Idiocracy. Like, what do the politics look like in Idiocracy? That's what the Republican Party is going to look like. Ketchup says, we need to wait until after the 2028 election. For what, Ketchup? Christopher M. Lewis says, if you judge somebody based on their race, it's racism, doesn't matter which direction. I mean, yes, Christopher, you could define it in that way, but some people define it as being intimately connected to power dynamics. So I'm not going to die on that hill. I don't give a shit either way. However you want to define it, that's how you want to define it. Daniel Knight says, thoughts on Charlie Kirk? want to say at the very top, I do not condone any kind of violence. I condemn assassinations in the strongest possible language, and that includes Charlie Kirk. What happened to him was very, very bad, and yeah, I condemn it in the strongest possible language. But that doesn't mean that Charlie Kirk was a good guy. Charlie Kirk was a bad guy. He was a liar. He was a con artist. He was toxic for our political culture. He lied to people. He lied to win debates against college kids so that he could indoctrinate them into a billionaire. What's the word I'm looking for? A billionaire sycophant's version of right wing politics. Tatum says, thoughts on Israel? I'm sure the people that live in Israel are great. The government of Israel is terrible. They are guilty of war crimes. Griffin Jr. says, name one thing you lied about. Okay, let's see here. Charlie Kirk, PolitiFacts. PolitiFacts. I love this question because, let's see here. Because then I get to read this list of Charlie Kirk lies again. Where's my... You know what? Easier way to do this. PolitiFact. All right, Joshua Kimmich says, would you be happy if Trump got assassinated? No, that would be extremely destabilizing for America. And again, I do not condone any kind of violence, political or otherwise. Okay, let's see here. Charlie Kirk. Of the 269 of the 17 comments that PolitiFact has scored, 90% of them are rated as mostly false, false, or pants on fire. So let's see here. The 14th Amendment has never been challenged at SCOTUS. PolitiFact viewed that as false. Jamie Foxx left paralyzed and blind from a brain clot in his brain after a COVID-19 vaccine injection. That is false. Maricopa County intentionally reduced polling places. That was listed as pants on fire. So there you go. There's a whole bunch. All right. Let's see here. Your mom. I don't know anything about libertarian flagellism. I don't know anything about the Naxalites. Irishman says, do you think Ukraine should accept Russia's most recent peace deal or not? I mean, that's up to the Ukraine. I'm not really up on the specifics of that peace deal. I do not believe that Vladimir Putin is acting in good faith. So any peace treaty that Ukraine does with Russia is going to have to include some sort of mechanism for enforcement, because otherwise they could just go back to attacking them the next day. Okay, Gladiator says, do you think people are informed enough to vote? Should we enforce tests or electoral systems change? So we do not have, and I don't believe that we should have, like an educational standard for being able to vote, because that is subject to potential weaponization. Like, this is what happened during the Jim Crow era, where they were giving all these bogus literacy tests to black people to see if they were smart enough to vote, and the literacy tests were like psychotic things. They were like, how many gumballs are in this jar? You have to guess correctly how many gumballs are in the jar, you know? Yeah, you know, anything similar to that could be potentially weaponized as a poll tax. I think there's a better, softer way to accomplish that goal, which is to mandate civics in public school educations and private school educations. That's number one. But do we also need electoral change? Yes, 100%. Absolutely. We got to get rid of the Electoral College. We got to rebalance the Senate map with statehood for DC or statehood for Puerto Rico or both. We need to expand the House. Like, there are so many. We need to get money out of politics. We need to overturn Citizens United. Like, 100%. There are changes that we're 100% going to need to make there. John Abbott says, did you see that Delaware made it so corporations get to vote in local elections? You know, I did see that. I didn't read too much into it, but that is obviously psychotic and very concerning, and corporations are not people, so they should not be able to vote. All righty. Gladiator says, but a test done well knowledge, not intelligence. I don't know. I think the devil's in the details. I don't know how confident I am in a test being fair to every constituency in America. Let's see here. That Romanian guy says, do you think there should be a tax on unrealized gains to avoid tax schemes? Yes. A whole bunch of Moon says, Kirk should be a lesson to the left in trying more to use debates and reason. Charlie Kirk didn't use reason. He used bullshit debate tactics and lies. The Fixer Mike says, California should split into 5 states. That's one possibility, I suppose. Gladiator says, thoughts on affirmative action? I'm for it. Griffin Jr. says, why do you support Trump being unfairly treated? Trump has never been unfairly treated. Trump is the most fairly treated human being on the planet. He has committed so many crimes and yet is not in jail. He has gone bankrupt so many times. He still gets to rake in millions and millions of dollars through corruption and grift. Like, it is psychotic to think that Trump was ever being treated unfairly in his entire life. He failed upward for his entire life. He has really been given the special white boy privileges of all time. Okay, Moon says he did use reason to be honest, even though I don't agree with him either. He didn't, though. He lied. He lied to people. It's easy to appear reasonable when you are just lying and making shit up. Alrighty, Gladiator says, okay, thoughts on recommendation system / social media algorithms, more polarized society? Yes, 100%. I do not think it is a coincidence that we are becoming more and more polarized, more and more ill-informed, and all of our information spheres are being controlled by right-wing billionaires. Like, that's not a coincidence at all. Griffin Jr. says, really, the Russia hoax was not unfair treatment? No. Hold on a second. Griffin Jr. says they literally proved corruption against Trump. They literally did not prove that at all. The Russia hoax was not a hoax. Did you read the Mueller report, Griffin Jr.? I don't think you did. I don't think you want to be proven wrong on this, but what you're saying is inaccurate. Russia did help Trump win the 2016 election. A bunch of people got indicted for it. So there you go. Hassan, I don't know anything about Somaliland. John Abbott says, no matter how perfectly fair you might manage to make a test for voting eligibility, socioeconomics will make it unfair. I 100% agree with what John Abbott just said. Griffin Jr. says, Hillary and Obama have been proven to falsify the investigation. You are wrong. No, Griffin Jr., that is not accurate at all. If it was, and the Trump administration is currently in charge of all 3 branches of government, then they would be in jail right now. But they're not, because that is false. Griffin Jr., you are in question jail. You either ask a question or you leave, because all you are saying are things that are lies and saying that they are true. Gladiator says, no, but what are your thoughts on it, Daniel, in terms of good / bad? How could it be fixed? How could what be fixed? Where are you, Gladiator? Oh, how could it be fixed? Oh, that is a really good... How do we fix it? Oh, that's a really good question. God, that is... Hold on a second. Ketchup, is that real? Is Griffin Jr. really Ken Paxton's son? Griffin Jr. says, clearly you don't know how democratic corruption works. That's not a question, so you're out of here. You were warned. Moon says, do you think the U.S. is democracy? I mean, it's a representative democracy. It's a democratic republic, you know. I know a lot of people on the right like to view that as a gotcha question. Like, it's not, it's a republic, but it's kind of both. It depends on how you define them, you know, like there's no real substantive weight to arguing the semantics of democracy versus republic in deciding what is or is not legal political behavior in America. Moon says, no, I mean, like, is it truly democratic? I mean, in certain ways it is. Like, it is ultimately the will of voters that does decide who our leaders are, but our electoral systems are grossly unfair and have been bought and paid for by the billionaire class, are manipulated on the daily by the people that own the social media algorithms and our news channels. So in that way, I'd say it's extremely flawed democracy. So yeah, I hope that answers your question. Ketchup says, Republic means non-monarchy. Democracy in modern terms mean people decide who gets to govern. Fair enough. The Victor Mike says, do you think Pamela Joe Bondi's thyroid cancer is a bit too coincidental, the way that Russia treats its enemies? I don't know. I'm skeptical that Russia would try to give Pam Bondi thyroid cancer. Is it possible that she's making it up as an excuse for X, Y, or Z? I've got no idea. I don't really have a dog in that fight. Gladiator says thoughts on China. Xi Jinping is an authoritarian, and just even if authoritarians sometimes do good things like heavily investing in renewable energy and building high-speed rail, like there is still a foundational necessity for people having power and having freedom. And so if you are one of the Uyghurs, for example, or if you are somebody that has talked about Tiananmen Square and is now in a labor camp for the rest of your fucking life, like I'm sure you don't really give a shit about how many solar panels China is printing on the daily. Havid says thoughts on femboys. If boys want to be femboys, then let them be femboys. Okay. Moon says CIA talking points. I don't know what that means. Ketchup says China is an Eastern country and sees things differently with different history. Okay. Willie says ladyboys or femboys. I mean, I'm sure they're both allowed to exist. I wouldn't pick either one if I was looking for a partner. Ted says, what red states do you think could go blue in the future, like Texas? Ooh, that's a really good question. I don't know. I don't know how many states. I think it depends on what you mean by. Hold on. I just got reported for unverified claims, which is obviously bullshit. And we're only at 30 minutes, so I think I'm just gonna stop and restart my live stream. Like my numbers have not been great today, so I'm just gonna stop and start my live stream to get out of this flag situation here. So if you're watching and you like the live stream, come right back because I will be right back, everybody. Here we go. How's it going, everybody? And welcome to Ask Me Anything About Politics. My name is Jarrett, and I'm here to answer all of your questions about politics, be they simple or complicated. This is a show for everybody, whether you are a Republican, a Democrat, something in the middle, something on the outskirts. So long as you are asking questions in good faith, you will be given a good faith answer. This is not a show for fighting or debating or roasting or getting owned. I know there's a lot of very popular shows out there where Democrats and Republicans yell at each other and call each other names and try to own each other. That is not this show at all. It is just good faith answers to all of your good faith questions. What's up, Moons? And no, China is not democratic. If you can decide to make yourself president for life, like Xi Jinping did, then it is not democratic. Jagoop says there are no red or blue states, only Israeli states. That is inaccurate. Jagup. I find that some of the hyperbole surrounding how much control Israel has over America to be kind of anti-Semitic coded. So I don't really truck with that sort of shit. Like, if you want to make an argument that Israel has an outsized influence in American politics, like I'm fine with you making that argument, but to say there's no red states or blue states because Israel decides everything is inaccurate, hyperbolic, and seems somewhat anti-Semitic coded. Alrighty, let's see here. Moon says it's called a People's Republic. Well, so is North Korea, but North Korea is also dictatorship. Do you think that the North Korea is also democratic? Younger liberaler says Betty bought some butter, but the butter Betty bought was bitter, so Betty bought some better butter. The better version of that, younger, is you got to name her Betty Botta. Betty Botta bought some butter, but she said this butter is bitter. If I put it in my batter, it will make my batter bitter. But a bit of better butter will make my bitter batter better. So Betty Botta bought a bit of better for her bitter batter. Okay, Willie says, not familiar with China politics. Does China have elections and does Xi rig them? I'm not sure about the structure of the government, but I do know that for the past few election cycles for president have been canceled because Xi Jinping declared himself president for life. Okay, let's see here. Wandering Fiend says the American Empire is over and tacky AF. We need European empires again. How about no empires? Wandering Fëanor? That sounds better to me. Mikhail says, could you answer my question I asked before? What question did you ask before? Why does racism not really against white Christian straight people? So, Mikhail, that has to do with whether you define racism as having anything to do with power. If you are the most powerful group on the planet or in the country, then some people might argue that it's impossible to be racist against you because in order to be racist, you would have to be sort of like punching down. In order for racism to exist, some people would argue you have to go from powerful to not powerful. I don't really care if that is or is not how you decide to define racism. I am not going to die on that hill. Okay, let's see here. Jacob says China is not democratic. I'm not sure about the political structure. You know, Jacob, I'm not really sure if you're here in good faith, so I'm going to go ahead and block you. All right. Welcome, everybody, to Ask Me Anything About Politics. My name is Jarrett. I am here to answer all of your questions about politics, be they simple or complicated, be they left-wing or right-wing. I am here to answer all your questions in good faith. You are welcome here, whether you are a Republican, a Democrat, someone in the middle, or something on the outskirts. I'm not here to fight you. I'm just here to answer all of your good faith questions. JJ says, what's your side of the political side? I am a progressive Democrat. Ketchup says, what do you think of why going after Citizens United? Every state should go after Citizens United. Mikhail Meme says, I mean offensive and do bad stuff against a person simply because they are white or black. I mean, yeah, it's possible for people to do that, but whether or not you define that as racism or not depends on how you define racism. What's up, Odinson? Great to see you again. Do you think there is a systemic racist policies? If so, what are they? Thanks. There definitely are. I gotta tell you, I'm a little unprepared for this question because if you talk to somebody who is more familiar with things like what's the expression that was demagogued so many years ago, critical race theory, they're a little bit more up on the specifics about how racist policy in the past is still repressing people today. The short version, the analogy is like, let's say that you had a building that was built by people that hated people in wheelchairs, so the entire building was designed in a way to make people in wheelchairs' lives hard, where it was just like staircases everywhere and half floors everywhere. So even if you got to the next floor, there was still difficulty getting around and like really bumpy floors and shit like that. And then you replaced all the people in charge of the building. You still have the fundamental structure of the building being anti-people in wheelchairs. And, you know, you can make that argument, and I tend to agree with that argument, for the way that America is structured right now. I think that a pretty good example of that would be like the Senate map and the Electoral College, where these are remnants of creating electoral systems back when slavery and racism were still legal. And so, you know, a lot of power was sort of like given to the slave states and the racist states in order to kind of like appease them and bring them into the fold of the Union. And so, yeah, there's a bunch of sort of like systemic racism in there and unconscious racism and dog whistle racism, you know. I hope that answered your question. If you want more specifics than that, shoot me a DM and I will do a little bit more research on that. What's up, Average Joe? Why does Twitch say that you've been live for 40 minutes? You've only been live for 5. I got reported for unconfirmed reports, which is obviously bullshit. So I had to restart my TikTok. Also, Average Joe, is it cool if I share your news that you shared with me yesterday on the live stream? Let me know if it's cool and how you would like me to describe your position to people. Battle Balls says, who really runs the country, and Republicans and Democrats work together to keep the people separated? First of all, Republicans and Democrats don't work together to keep the people separated. That is the goal of the billionaire class. The billionaire class tries to get us all fighting amongst themselves. But there is a difference between when the Republican Party is in charge and the Democratic Party is in charge. And anybody that tries to tell you that both parties are the same is doing the work of the billionaire class. The billionaire class wants you to think that the government is useless so that they can have a more libertarian view. They can have a more libertarian government that lets them not pay taxes and, you know, just do whatever the fuck they want with the chemical pollution from their plants and shit like that. Willie says, do you think there is a deep state? No, I do not. Mikhail Meme says, do you know Finland has a prime minister and a president leading the country? No, I did not know that. Elijah or not. So I just met someone running for U.S. Senate. Ooh, that's cool. Let's see here. Zad says the billionaire class is in charge of the Democratic Party. Why are we being disingenuous? The billionaire class is not in charge of the Democratic Party. It is true that anybody who has a lot of money can have an outsized influence in the political parties. But if you look at the political parties and what they have done in regards to the billionaire class versus the working class, it is clear that the Republican Party is the one that is in league with the billionaires, and the Democratic Party is the one that is working for the people. I'm happy to go over more specifics with you on that, Zad, but I will not let you just stay in my live stream and say, no, what you just said was wrong. Hold on a second. Come up and says, conveniently skipping Epstein questions. I didn't see any Epstein questions. G says, do you support Kurdish independence? I don't know anything about it, but I guess I supported it because I just support independence for everybody, I suppose. Odin Sun says, can you discuss why the Electoral College is no longer viable, please? I think that I don't think it's ever been viable, and there have been other attempts throughout American history to get rid of the Electoral College. The issue that I think we need to recognize with the Electoral College is that, number one, it gives an advantage to Republican candidates, but more importantly, is it doesn't do what it says it's supposed to do. Like, it doesn't equal the playing field between small states and big states. All it does is it focuses every presidential election in the same 10 or so swing states, where if you're a Republican living in California, you might as well throw your ballot for president in the garbage. If you're a Democrat living in Alabama, you might as well throw your ballot for president in the garbage. It doesn't make any sense that a voter in California has less political power than a voter in Wyoming. Like, it just does not make any sense. Aaron, I believe the word you just used is a slur, so maybe we can say Romani's instead. Ketchup says only 23% of the population live in the top 100 largest cities. I'm not sure what point you're trying to make with that, Ketchup, or even if it is true. And Average Joe, no, I did not. It should be the same as it was before. So yeah, Average Joe is working on the Hockett campaign, and he's helping assign positions. And he has an unofficial position with them, and it's very fluid. And but it is cool that he's involved with the Hockett campaign. I hope that I did a good job of describing that accurately, Average Joe. Okay, let's see here. Thanasis, I don't know enough about Greece's politics. Odinson says, thoughts on George Soros? George Soros is one of the few left-wing billionaires that gives exclusively to the Democratic Party. He is not nearly as bad of a billionaire as every billionaire who donates to the Republican Party. And yet, because he's like the Democratic Party's one billionaire, he gets scapegoated constantly on Fox News and other right-wing media. Also, because he's Jewish, he's a very helpful scapegoat. He's a very helpful boogeyman for the right. Dickmouth says, do you support, I don't know why people keep on talking about neoliberal flagellism. I don't know what that is. Odin says, the media makes him feel icky. I mean, there's no such thing as a moral billionaire, but if there is, he is one of them. Ketchup says, according to conservatives, all other billionaires like Koch are good people, though. Well, they are lying to you. I'll tell you one thing that the Koch brothers did that George Soros never fucking did in his entire career. The worst thing that George Soros did to make a whole bunch of money was short the British pound. And that's it. But the problem is that when you short things, like, you're kind of pushing them towards failing. You know, there's a vibe-ishness towards the stock market. So that's literally the worst thing that George Soros ever did to make money. The Koch brothers, on the other hand, they do shit like, oh, we've got an old pipe here that would cost us $5 million to renovate. Let's just keep on using it even though it might fail one day. Oops, it failed, it exploded, and now a bunch of teens are dead because we exploded them with our old fucking pipe because we wanted to save $5 million. Well, we'll pay $1 million in restitution to the families, and then we still saved $4 million. Pretty cool, right? They killed people. Anyways, Jack says both sides are bad. The ones that say one side is different from the other is delusional. That is inaccurate, Jack. First of all, you're in question jail. Second of all, if you would like me to give you examples of how the Democratic Party is better than the Republican Party, I am happy to do that. Joseph says Trump or Kamala. What a weird question in 2026. British says, are you American or British? Another weird question considering you can hear the lack of English accent. Okay, Zad says, do you deny or admit that the elites are heavily involved in the Democratic Party? They are, but they are way more involved in the Republican Party because the Republican Party platform is a wish list for the elites. It's Christmas every day when the Republicans are in charge. Okay, let's see here. Mulin says, are you a socialist? I'm not a socialist. I'm not a communist. I'm not a capitalist. I believe in a mixed model. John Jack says 2016, Bernie, Hillary, or Trump. I was for Bernie, and then I was for Hillary when Bernie lost the primary. User a whole bunch of numbers says, why is Kamala Harris so anti-working class? She is not. Joseph said, dude said, ask anything, doesn't answer the question. I don't know. I just think it's weird that you're asking me to pick between two people whose election is already over. All right, Miguel Cardenas says, Vance or Rubio? They are both a bunch of ding-dongs. Cobra says, are all billionaires loyal Republicans? That is a really good question, and I would say the answer is probably no. I don't think that billionaires are loyal to anybody specifically, but they will do the work of electing the politicians that put more money in their pockets. And that is the Republican Party by a fucking mile, by a fucking light year. The Republican Party cuts taxes for the rich. The rich use that extra money to help elect more Republicans. Republicans get elected again. They cut taxes for the rich again. The rich use that money to elect more Republicans, etc., etc. Batch Hit Crazy says, Bernie didn't lose the primary. He 100% lost the primary. Batch Hit Crazy. Jack says, both parties are completely different and have different values than 20 years ago. That is accurate, but that doesn't disprove what I just said. Connor Slattery says, can you understand per capita? Yes, I can. What is that in reference to? Let's see here. I do not know anything about Colombian politics. So sorry. What's up, Lauren? Good to see you again. Ketchup says, Vance, I think, is losing his chance at running. From your lips to God's ears. Astra says, the elite switch side every election, don't they? No, that is inaccurate. It is true that rich people sometimes give money to both candidates just to make sure that they have a foothold, depending on who wins the election. But if you look at billionaire donations to political candidates, 75% of all political donations by billionaires go to the Republican Party. And it makes sense that they would, because the Republican Party cuts taxes for the billionaire class and cuts regulations for their businesses, and the Democratic Party raises taxes for the billionaire class and regulates their businesses. It just makes more sense, guys. Alrighty, Average Joe says, say billionaires again. You got it, man. Ketchup says, primary system is really dumb. You have to win states that don't even help you at all in the general. I don't know if I agree with that, Ketchup. Iron Granny says, can we get your two-state solution to Israel and Palestine? I don't know. There are people who are much smarter on that issue, Iron Granny, than I, who will tell you that because Israel has annexed so much territory from Palestine, and demagogued the Palestinian people so much, that a two-state solution is basically impossible at this point. So how do we go about solving that problem? How do we go about solving the problem of tensions between those two states and Israel treating Palestinians like second-class citizens and creating an open-air prison in Palestine? I think step one is America needs to use its leverage against the Israeli government to stop them doing war crimes and genocide. We need to stop sending them money and weapons. End of story. After that, we need to start with some outreach. After that, we need to start actually solving problems so that there aren't West Bank settlers, there aren't Israelis just like kicking people out of their homes in the West Bank, and there aren't people just starving to death and living in rubble in Palestine. It is obviously an extremely complicated problem and issue, so I think that's where you have to start and then kind of go from there. Oh, let's see here. Jay says, move them to America. Y'all love them so much. I mean, if they'll have us, you know. Okay. Matthew says, what do you think of market socialism? I don't know what you mean by that. I don't know who Petro Uribe is. You're welcome, Aaron Granny. Ketchup says, we need to change the Constitution to let Mamdani run for president. It seems a little putting the cart before the horse there. I think Mamdani's doing a great job, but how about we just elect more people like Mamdani? Jack says the Democratic Party needs a leader. They don't have one. They don't even have an identity right now. That is inaccurate, Jack. The Democratic Party does have an identity. I don't think that they need a leader. The entire point of the Democratic Party is that it's a big tent, and so it is difficult to pick one specific ideology to be the lead ideology. But yeah, when we're not in a presidential election year, it is difficult to have a leader of a political party. You know, Jack, I am not seeing you ask any questions. All I am seeing is you trying to throw mud on the Democratic Party. Jack says, "What's their identity? The switch to socialism?" Question mark. No, the identity of the Democratic Party is a party for the working class against the billionaire class. It is a party that believes in the positive use of the government against the wealthy and the powerful. It is a party that believes in equality for all and fairness for all and voting for all. It is a party that believes in protecting the environment and not polluting our air and our water. It is a party that believes in doing something about climate change and making smart decisions regarding foreign policy, not starting stupid fucking wars in the Middle East. Let's see here. Jack says, that's not true. Don't lie to people. Both parties are bad for the common man. So Jack, you're in question jail. The next thing you say that isn't a question, you're out of here because you're just lying. You're just making shit up. Vanessa says, hello, I'm registered Democrat. Last year I was too young to vote. What do you think of AOC? I love AOC. She's great. And I'm so glad that you are a registered Democrat, and I hope that you are old enough to vote in the 26 midterms. Vanessa, do you have plans to vote in the midterms? Let me know. Noura says, as a half Palestinian, I do agree Dems are better, but I wish they were more harsher with Israeli settlers. 100% agree with you, Noura. But this is the thing that I have a problem with, where people come on here and argue that both parties are the same. Is it true that the Biden administration needed to do more to push back against the Netanyahu administration? Yes, 100%. But that does not mean that Republicans are better or the same as the Democratic Party where Israel is concerned. What I say normally about this is I'm sure the people in Palestine would have told you to vote for Kamala Harris if they could have, because we knew Trump was going to do this, you know? Brian Smith says, do you think The View is far left, like the TV show? No, I don't think The View is far left. Jack says, don't get heated over my questions. Ask me anything about politics. Again, you need to ask a question or you're out of here, Jack. Palm Beach says, both parties are the fucking same, both lobbied by corporations. But that is inaccurate, Palm Beach PD. Would you like me to go into more detail? Let me know. Matthew says, true leftism is anarchistic communism. I don't agree with that. Nora says, Republicans are not better. They are worser. They don't care about settlement and do more war crimes. 100% accurate. Joseph Morse says, you kind of look like the new Magic John. I don't know who that is. Swagistani says, Al-Qaeda of ISIS? I don't know what that means. ZZ says, debate me, son. No, I don't do debates. User a whole bunch of numbers. Says, Pelosi and Schumer, absolute, were bought by corporations. I do not believe that is accurate. I do not believe that you vote for the Affordable Care Act if you are owned by the insurance companies, because the insurance companies put millions of dollars trying to destroy the Affordable Care Act. The Affordable Care Act would not have gotten passed without Pelosi and Schumer. Now, are they my favorites? Have they done things that I think are bad and are potentially could be viewed of as being corporate stooges? 100%. But it is inaccurate to say that they are 100% corporate stooges. C says, wait, so people in the Middle East do prepare Democrats? I don't know what that question means. All right, let's see here. Matthew says, we must liberate the worker from the private owner. I agree with that. Jack says, how would you have handled the Israeli genocide? Both parties have money to Israel. What I would have done is added to what Biden did. Biden sanctioned West Bank settlements. Biden stopped sending 2,000-pound bombs to Israel. Trump undid both of those things and basically gave Netanyahu carte blanche to not only continue his genocide against the Palestinians, but also start a war against Iran and Lebanon and all of his other fucking neighbors that Netanyahu's had a hard on for destroying for the last couple of decades. Additionally, I would have stopped sending money and weapons to Israel entirely. I would have used some more of America's leverage to stop Netanyahu. But, you know, Biden, that was one of his biggest mistakes that he made, was not doing that. C says, genuine question, do you think there's rise of people being pro-Palestine is making Democrats lose? No, I do not believe that is accurate. Jack says, no, Biden and Edmund also gave Israel tons of money. Both Biden and Trump gave much to Israel. Congratulations, Jack. You were out of here. I can tell when somebody is bad faith. All right, Matthew says, what do you think of anarchism? I'm against it. Teflon says, Trump won the popular vote, therefore the people have spoken. Yeah, but not everybody voted that could have voted, Teflon. User a bunch of numbers says, another big mistake Biden made was not packing the Supreme Court. You know, user a bunch of numbers, I don't think he had the votes for it. I don't think that Joe Manchin or Kristen Sinema would have voted to confirm somebody to the Supreme Court that was not replacing somebody. So I think that Biden, what did he do? He commissioned a study on how to fix the Supreme Court, but without Joe Manchin and Kristen Sinema's votes, I think that was dead in the water. Okay, Asurge MN says Social Democrats are centrist. That is wildly inaccurate. Nico Goober says, who do you want in 28? First of all, I want Democrats to win the midterms in 26. So let's be focused on the midterms in 26. And let's not start wishcasting 28 when we got midterms in 26 coming up. Timmy Tim says, I haven't seen you in a while. Were you banned? No, I had a baby, and so I took a month off. R says, I thought the pro-Palestinian community is why Kamala lost. I think that there are certain pockets of people who were very upset about Biden's policies towards Israel and Palestine. Some of them decided not to vote in 24. I don't know if that was the thing. There were a lot of things that you could blame Democratic losses on in 24. I think it's a little overly simplistic to say that it was just that one thing that lost them their election. It's possible that you could point to very specific districts or states where those specific people sitting out or voting for Trump could potentially be the reason why Democrats lost. But there were pretty seismic shifts away from the Democratic Party in 24 that I do not think that you can blame just on Biden's lack of a spine in holding Netanyahu to account. Noah says she sent Dick Cheney to Dearborn. That is inaccurate. She sent Liz Cheney to Dearborn. And if you want evidence that the media narratives are biased against the Democratic Party, the Liz Cheney shit is the perfect example. Because why did Liz Cheney endorse Kamala Harris? Not because they had the same policy positions, not because they're both warmongers. Liz Cheney and Kamala Harris said it their fucking selves with their whole ass heart. They went out there and they said, we disagree on basically everything, but Donald Trump is such a grossly incompetent and corrupt human being and will be such a terrible president that even somebody who disagrees with me as much as Liz Cheney is going to vote for me. And the media machine, the social media machine took that and they chewed it up. And what they spit out was both parties are the same. Kamala Harris is a warmonger. Kamala Harris and Liz Cheney are the same. They're basically the same as Dick Cheney. Don't vote for the Democratic Party. They're too centrist. They're Republican light, et cetera, et cetera. It is 100% bullshit propaganda narratives trying to convince people to either vote for Republicans or not vote at all. All right, everybody, we are over an hour. I have got to start wrapping things up. So if you like the show, if you like what I'm doing here and you want to support the show financially, you can. There are mechanisms for you to do that. You don't have to, obviously. I know that we're all struggling in a cost of living crisis that Donald Trump is making worse by the second. But if you have the dollars and you want to give them to me because you think that what I'm doing here is helpful, then the mechanisms exist. You can send gifts on TikTok. You can send bits on Twitch. You can be a super fan on TikTok. You can be a subscriber on Twitch. And if you have Amazon Prime, you can subscribe to my Twitch channel for free. Costs you $0, helps me out a ton. Special thank you to Rem, Gladiator, and Aaron Gregory for helping me reach my final gift goal of the day. And also you also join my Patreon for as little as $1 a month. Special thanks to my regular financial contributors, Pliff, Average Joe, Triska, Lauren, the two Seans, Dee, Shannon, Carmine, and Patrick. If you would like to have your name read on the show, join the Patreon, be a Twitch subscriber, or a TikTok superfan. Regular streaming schedule is Monday through Friday, starting around 11:30 a.m. Pacific time. That is subject to change at a moment's notice because I have a 1-month-old, and this is my wife and I's first baby, and we're still figuring shit out. If there are any questions that I was not able to get to on this live stream, DMs are open. please hit me up. I want to be a resource for you. So DM me, email me through my website. Link is in the bio, or hit me up on my Discord channel. Link is on the bio as well. The Discord is a great resource also because there's a wonderful community of like-minded people there, people that don't necessarily agree with each other 100%, but are at least open to having good faith, intelligent dialogue about politics. And if you want to know things that you can do to help or be more involved in politics, there's great recommendations there on the Discord. There's recommendations for books and podcasts and work that we should all be doing to fix what's going on right now. Because you and I doing the work is the only way that we get out of this. You and I doing the work is the only way that we fix this. The internet is not going to save us. The internet is owned by the billionaire class. The news is not going to save us. The news is owned by the billionaire class. So we have to get out there and do the work, talk to people in real life, boycott, protest, strike, put political pressure on our representatives and business leaders, recruit and convince, and most importantly, get out there and vote. The Republican Party, the Trump administration, the Supreme Court, they're trying to take your vote away from you. So do not let them. Vote hard. Vote in every election. And then they try to dilute your vote or take it away from you. Say, suck my butthole, you fucking assholes. You cannot stop me. I am fucking voting. I'm an American citizen. I'm going to fucking vote in this election. Alrighty, everybody. Any last thing I want to get to? Anybody who brings up the flangellist movement or whatever is getting blocked going forward. I'm tired of that word. I know it's trolling. I know what trolling looks like. Stephen Peterson, were you surprised that Trump won every swing state? Yes, I was. Let's see here. Vinny Sully says, when are we going to see Gavin News scum go down for money laundering? I mean, do you have a problem with Trump money laundering as well? Or is it only Democrats that could potentially beat him in a presidential election that you have a problem with? Alrighty. And thank you, Lauren. Me and the wife are doing well. All right, everybody. Be good to each other. Do the work. You don't have to be a dick to do the work. So be good to each other and do the work. Be good to yourselves. Self-care is part of the work. And I will see you guys tomorrow.